in growing talent on a global scale with business language skills. With David Wentworth, Principal Learning Analyst at Brandon Hall Group, John Ambrose, President of GoFluent, and Wes Scott, Manager Global L&D at DXC Technology. John, GoFluent President since 2018, is a well-known learning industry innovator, thought leader, and executive. Since 2001, he was a top Skillsoft executive where he held roles including Chief Strategy Officer, Head of SumTotal, and Founder General Manager of Books 24/7. Previously, he was CEO of Delta Point of Monterey, California, and an executive with SoftBank and Phoenix Technologies. Wes is a recognized champion of global strategic learning programs, including language programs that develop talent and improve business outcomes in the IT services industry. During the previous 30 years, he has held numerous business, corporate responsibility, and HR leadership roles in Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Hewlett-Packard, and EDS, supporting clients, partnering with external stakeholders, and managing change for employees through business acquisitions, divestitures, and transitions. I would like to extend a thank you to GoFluent for sponsoring today's webinar. Effective language skills are increasingly important in multinational organizations and should be in the heart of every global L&D and D&I strategy. GoFluent is a Swiss company that for the past 20 years has been providing award-winning solutions that accelerate language skills for anyone who needs to communicate effectively in more than their native tongue. The company's cloud-based solution hyper-personalizes the learning experience on any device with a unique blend of content, technology, and human interaction. GoFluent Solutions helps every employee, regardless of their native tongue, perform to their full potential. I wanted to also share a little bit about Brandon Hall Group. Brandon Hall Group is a research and analyst firm that empowers excellence in organizations around the world through our research and tools. Our vision is to inspire a better workplace experience. We have world-class research, data, and expertise across all areas in human capital management. Currently, we have open surveys in optimizing learning to drive performance, learning and development benchmarking, learning technology, and career development survey. We would love to hear from you. In exchange, you could receive a free gift card, research, and more. To participate, please visit our website, www.brandonhall.com, and click on Open Surveys. And finally, a few housekeeping items. This presentation is being recorded. The playback will be provided to everyone within 24 hours of the webinar in a follow-up email. If you'd like to ask a question, please do so by typing into the questions box for our presenters. If you would like to download a copy of the presentation instantly, you may find it in the handout section. Now let's turn it over to David so we can get started.
Great, thanks everybody, and thanks for joining us. And I just wanted to leave up this questions screen just for a little bit, just so you get familiar. I do encourage you to ask questions as we move through. We'll try to answer those, in real time for relevant questions. We'll also have a little bit of time at the end for anything we might have missed or any new questions that come up. So please take advantage of that, as we'd love to have a chat with you today. And that's the best way to talk to us, through the question box. So, what we are obviously going to talk about today is, as the title suggests, language skills and how important that is to organizations. And to sort of set the stage for you, we just think about what's going on around the world. So you think about the world, there's 7.5 billion people on this planet. And if we look and see how many of those people would be considered to be English speakers, and about 20%, 1.5 billion people speak English total, and that could be their first language, a second language, third or fourth, or so on. But that's the number of people around the world that currently speak English. And if we think about in that subset, what about people around the world who are native English speakers? So people who have English as their first language. So only about 5% of the people on the planet. And the reason why we focus on this is, as it's been seen, is English is the language of business typically. And it's the way things are being done around the world. And what this presents for organizations is a challenge that in order for them to be able to do business around the globe and be able to operate on a global scale like many organizations do, they need to make sure that everyone is able to communicate with one another in a way that there are no miscommunications, that everyone understands each other, can work together. And so this is a challenge that they're facing. And we've seen in our research that this can be a huge issue. When we looked at one of our recent studies, Women in Leadership from 2019, we asked organizations, what's your geographic footprint? How do you operate? And you can see, well, only 4% say, and this is for organizations over 10,000 employees, only 4% said that they are located in one country and one location, that's their operation. There were 30%, nearly a third, said we are mostly in one country, even though we have multiple locations in that country. So that's a little more than a third of that organizational population operates within one country. But the rest, the other 65%, are distributed around the globe to some degree or another and have employees all over the place that need to be able to communicate and collaborate. And so organizations really need to think about how they approach language. And we have John and Wes are with us today to really sort of get into a mindset of how do we think about language. And what you'll see is a lot of organizations have thought of this very secondarily. But as you dig a little deeper, you can see how critical it is to an organization that operates on this scale, and it needs to move up the value chain quite a bit. And so, John, I kind of want to turn over to you to sort of, bring us all up to speed with the way organizations who do this right are thinking about language.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, David, and thanks everyone for joining us today from whatever part of the world you're in. And I thought we'd kick it off with just a simple question. Bill Gates' biggest regret. What do you think that could be? The richest man in the world. What is it that he wished he had done differently or wish he had? And I think there's fills in there, with the this was the subhead in the Daily Mirror or Daily Mail in the UK that published this story, and it said that the richest man in the world has one regret, and that was he felt stupid. And this is the Daily Mail's words, not mine, for not knowing any foreign languages. And that really made an impact on me, because I think those listening to this webinar today who are lucky enough to have been born native English speakers have an immediate and significant advantage in the global economy, strictly by accident of birth. Got greater career opportunities, greater earning power, greater social mobility, greater opportunities to travel and improve your livelihood and ultimately your family's livelihood. And yet, as David pointed out, less than 5% of the world are native English speakers. So as Bill Gates traveled the world, I'm sure he saw that this is a big issue, and companies like Sodexo see that this is an increasing issue within their organizations. I love this quote from the head of employee and change communication at Sodexo, saying that businesses are organized globally and not regionally these days. This is a big trend, right? We want to become more efficient by collaborating across geographies, and English is an enabler of that. And this strikes me because so many organizations historically have thought of language skills as a remediation problem. Let's find the 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 people who really struggle with language, and let's fix them. Forward-thinking companies like Sodexo are really thinking about the global market and having employees and talents spread across the globe and being able to upskill their language skills as an enabling technology, not a remediation issue. And here you can see just some of the places where language really drives results and global efficiency, which is the title of our talk today. Everything I've seen companies that have acquired companies that are based in non-native English speaking countries and need to synergize the employees with the rest of the culture and the rest of the company. Language is a barrier. I've seen companies that have these massive global projects that stretch across countries, that stretch across different languages, and have project managers from all across the world. and language can be a barrier to efficiently tackling some of these projects. I've seen companies invest in world-class leadership programs that are based here in the US or the UK or Australia or some other native English-speaking country. The programs are great programs. They're built in English, but within a multinational company where you're bringing in leaders from around the world to participate in those programs, they may not have the level of business English skills required to be as effective as they need to be. And that's really what we're talking about here, is not just the level of conversational proficiency that where you can feel comfortable ordering in a restaurant or having a casual conversation. We're really talking about business proficiency, where the skill set, the language skill set of your employees is at the level where they can negotiate with customers, they could contribute effectively to global project teams, that they can lead others, et cetera. Now, I've seen many different strategies to approaching this issue, and I'll share with you the 3 worst language strategies I've seen with multinational companies. And the first one is we hire to English. It's probably the most predominant one, but the ability for someone to pass a static written test at the time that they're being recruited or hired is not the best strategy for bringing great people into an organization and developing their skill set. Now, we don't think this way when we think about hiring programmers, right? We don't say, well, we hire great programmers, therefore we don't need to give them tools to grow and develop their programming skills. We don't say this to leaders. We don't say we only hire great leaders, and therefore we don't need leadership programs. Of course, companies are investing in programming learning solutions. They're investing in leadership learning solutions. English is a skill set that is universally valuable. And so just hiring to English is going to bring people into an organization who are not native English speakers, who are not given the ability to improve and therefore grow and therefore act at their or perform at their full potential within your organization. The second strategy is we let individual countries handle it. We're a big company. We've got offices all over the world. We're just going to let them handle it in the countries where this is an issue. I've seen this lead to a tremendous amount of what I call rogue spend. That if you think about it, maybe you're a company with 50 different locations, and if you let 50 different countries handle this individually, you're dealing with 50 different vendors with duplicate spend, inconsistent programs, no economies of scale, no consistent reporting. It's a real challenge. So just letting the countries handle it, it may be a strategy, but it's not a very effective strategy, and certainly not a very cost-effective strategy for a large multinational organization. And finally, I've heard companies say language learning isn't a priority, and I hope that by virtue of you attending this webinar today, that you're at least thinking that this is a priority or should be a priority within our organization. We're a large multinational company. We're dealing across borders. We're in a desperate war for talent in the global market, and many of the people that we're hiring, the best technical talent in the world, may not be coming from English-speaking countries. So as an L&D organization, you're thinking that this may be an opportunity for you. And on the next slide, what I've done here is just try to illustrate why I think this is a tremendous opportunity for global learning and development to lead. I have an example here. I chose 100,000 employees. Let's say your company has 100,000 employees, and let's say you're spread out in 80 different countries around the world. And of course, global business is where it's at. Most companies see growth coming from outside their domestic markets. So it's not unusual to see a company of 100,000 employees in 80 different countries. If that's the case, the likelihood is that around 50% of your employees are non-native English speakers. They weren't born to speak English, they were born to speak another language and may have learned English as a second, third, or fourth language, as David pointed out earlier. If you take those 50,000 non-native English speaker employees in this hypothetical example and look at them and were to do a deep dive on each individual, they would show up in a bell curve just like any other standard distribution of a large population. So you'd have an average right in the middle, and to the left of that, you have 50% of those 50,000 employees would have low proficiency in their English skills, 50% would have average or higher proficiency in those English skills. But what this demonstrates is that 25% of the total population, 25,000 of the 100,000 employees in this hypothetical company, have average to lower proficiency English skills and are going to be, if you don't provide a solution, they're going to be less engaged, less able to contribute, and they're going to be an at-risk population that's just not performing at its full potential. So as a learning and development organization, especially a global learning and development organization, I really implore you to think about the obligation we have to reach this audience and help them develop the skill set that they need to be more proficient, more conversant, and more efficient in a global environment where English is a language that is used to drive business. Wanted to just share some thoughts on why language programs have failed in the past, because I'll bet some of you who are listening might have tried a solution or two in the past. Maybe you've tried something on your own to develop a second language or a third language, and maybe you've actually tried implementing something at your organization that didn't go so very well. And I've seen some things that, some repetitive patterns. The first is that a one-size-fits-all approach. There are some products on the market with well-known names that are really designed for a consumer audience. It's designed for a tourist who is maybe going to France or Germany or Brazil for a vacation and wants to learn enough language to be able to order in a restaurant or ask for directions on the streets. Those products follow a very recognizable pattern. You start, at point A, you start to learn numbers and letters and some basic vocabulary and so forth, but it's a one-size-fits-all approach. The fact is that when it comes to English, most people in your organization probably have some background. They have these conversational skills, and they're not looking to relearn what they already know. They're looking to accelerate the things that they don't know and become better expressing themselves and communicating with colleagues and customers. The second thing is that many approaches in the past have been centered on content that's generic and irrelevant to the learner's world. The hypothetical examples of, Mademoiselle Thibault, if you're trying to learn French. Content that's not relevant to a learner's actual business environment, if you're trying to help them improve their language skills, is not going to be consumed the way language that actually helps them appreciate the language in the context of the world they're living. So if you're in the financial services industry, a learner who's trying to improve their English would be much more engaged in a solution that is focused on the language of that industry. Third, lack of confidence in absorbing and applying the language, and this is important. E-learning has done tremendous things for the ability to learn independently and just with a computer. But language is a little different than learning to code. Language needs to be applied, it needs to be practiced. And so you can intellectualize language from one of these consumer products that you might feel like you're making progress, but when it comes to applying the language and really absorbing it, they fall short because the product isn't designed to create that multi-environment. And which leads to the next one, which is this multimodal approach as opposed to a single modality approach. To really improve language, to fine tune it, to perfect it, you need the ability to challenge yourself in the way you speak it, the way you listen to it, the way you write it, and ultimately the way you comprehend it. And so having a multimodal approach is much more powerful and really is a multiplier effect for anyone who's trying to learn a language. And finally, programs that stand alone off to the side, it's a click to, hey, go take this if you want to use it, are not very effective. We have these incredible platforms, LMSs, LXPs, other HR platforms that enable organizations to touch employees at scale across the organization, having a language strategy and having a language solution that is tightly integrated in, it's discoverable, you're able to search it, you're able to find it in the course catalog, the topic hierarchy very easily, to share relevant lessons. Those are all important ways to drive engagement and consumption and ultimately KPIs and results around a language learning solution across the organization.
Yeah, and John, as you're about to step into, sort of how do we accelerate this type of learning, a question that came in that you might be able to answer for us, is there a good standardized measure of business English skill against which you can assess organizational needs for development? So is there something that organizations are using?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the most widely accepted scale is something called the CFER scale, which is the Common European Framework. And the CFER scale basically says, it breaks the language into A1 and A2 levels for beginners, and then a B1, B2 for intermediates, and C1, C2, and then up from there. And I think that conversational skills, the ability to speak in sentences, to be able to have a basic conversation with someone, is really, you're getting into that A2 level. So you may hire an employee who can pass a written test and have a basic skills at an A2, but if you put them in a customer negotiation, or you ask them to present to a project team, a multinational project team, and make a presentation in English, they won't have the skill set or the confidence to be able to do that at an A1 or A2 level. So you really need to get them to a B1 or B2 level or higher. And that's where the acceleration comes in. So that's, the next slide really, and it's my final slide because I really want to make sure that we get DXC to share their stories, that there are ways to accelerate language learning. It's tough. I know I'm a frustrated French learner myself. I've made progress, and I've made a lot of progress with the GoFluent solutions, but it's hard. It is not a simple skill to master, but a combination of content that's relevant to the learner, technology that is engaging, easy to use, easy to navigate, intuitive, is mobile enabled, is accessible on any device, and human interaction, which is that practice piece, that piece that really drives absorption. But combining these three key characteristics together and overlaying them with AI technology that can hyper-personalize the experience so that I'm not learning things I already know, that I'm able to take an adaptive test and based on the results of that test, be able to then have a tailored experience that reinforces the things that I need to improve on and doesn't waste my time. Because in business, it's all about time. It's all about efficiency. It's all about how do I get the desired result as quickly as possible. So it's really the combination of these three things: technology, content, and human interaction, with a growing AI component on top that can really hyper-personalize the experience, is how you drive accelerated language learning today and at scale in organizations.
Yeah, and I think your last point on this slide here about enterprise access, and you have some tools listed where people could be accessing this type of learning, is an important piece, because we talk so much about learning in the flow of work and meeting learners where they already are. The ability to sort of do this and to approach this language learning in places that people are already learning other things or doing their work is critical, as opposed to maybe sending them externally or outside of their familiar environments to get this done, because it adds not only the simplicity and the accessibility, but also the context around a lot of the languages that they're learning. So
yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Great English expression there. Absolutely. And you would be amazed at how many companies are still relying on expensive classroom-based, face-to-face language learning for their employees around the world who need it. And why are we doing that when we have these great platforms that are centralized and enable learning to be not only distributed but tracked and measured, and real KPIs, and really see the step improvement that can be made in an organization. And and David, you talked about the numbers, and I talked about numbers, and to a degree, that for a global organization to not look at language as a key enabler for their business is really it's a mistake. And we have the platforms now, as you point out, to do this.
Exactly.
Great.
Yep.
So
yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was going to say, would love to pass the baton to Wes, who's going to share a little bit about DXC's journey with language learning, and it's a great example of a large multinational global corporation with a history in the space and a great story to tell. So Wes, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Great, thanks, John. And glad to be here, everybody. My name is Wes Scouten with DXC Technology, and I am excited to share insights with you today about our journey and some of the ways that we have implemented and operationalized the things that you've heard already a little bit about in today's webinar. So I'll begin by giving you just a brief introduction to our company, talk about the importance that we feel that we place on language learning training, and some of the decision criteria that we use to select a strategic partner, GoFluent, and what that partner strategy entails. And then I'll finish up by talking a little bit about the business impact that we've realized as a result of our language program, some initial results of that, some utilization insights, and then in addition to those successes, also share some of our lessons learned and next steps, so that may help you on your journey to implementing a language learning program in your company. So briefly about DXC Technology, we are a approximately $20 billion global IT services company with 138,000 employees worldwide. So one of those large multinational companies that John was mentioning a minute ago. We combine years of experience running mission critical systems with the latest digital innovations to deliver better business outcomes and new levels of performance, competitiveness, and experiences for our customers and their stakeholders. We also operate in about 70 countries and have about 6,000 different customers, which you can see here on this slide. And those customers are in a number of different industries that was referenced earlier, right? So in addition to some general language training, we also need that customized focus on and ability to become better at speaking the language of the different industries in which our customers work. So and on the next slide, we also, as a global company, we certainly operate globally, and we also have regional regions that we have different profit centers in, and so forth and so on. So the countries, the 70 plus countries that we operate in, we think of in these 6 regions, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that comes into play with our deployment strategy in a few minutes. But to transition to a little bit of some insights into our language training program and why it's important to us as a company, because we do have such a global footprint, right? Our employees live in more than 100 countries and work in 70, speak more than 50 languages natively. We grow both organically as a company and through acquisitions. So effective business communication really becomes a strategic differentiator for us, and one that helps us realize a number of business benefits, including having those skills to communicate internally and collaborate more effectively with each other, as well as with our clients and our customers, and ultimately to help enable us to acquire, develop, and retain talent in what today is a very competitive global workforce. So how did we come to a decision to select GoFluent as our preferred strategic partner in this language training journey. Well, what we did was we talked to a number of our different business leaders and organizations around the world and identified some of the top criteria that were important to them, us, I should say, right, as criteria to evaluate different providers against. So for us, these that you see here on the slide became very, very important, including having multiple languages of study, because English is definitely the language of business that we use globally. However, there are also opportunities where we have teams in country or a client that is particularly focused in a particular country or region where other languages are used as well. So that became important to us. Having multiple portal languages available so that someone could access, if they're learning English, they could access that training in a portal that is more native to them. The ability to customize content, including from an industry perspective, and very importantly, having an enterprise license structure as opposed to a previous partner that we had used where we were on a per license basis. This concept of having an enterprise license that GoFluent has enabled us to transition to really helps us decentralize learning for everyone in our company globally and reduces the administrative burden on us as a provider of this training to our employees, right? And you can see a number of the other factors here as well that are more platform specific. And these were all things that in our case, partnering with GoFluent, felt that GoFluent really addressed these in very solid ways. So that's our decision criteria. We looked at those. We looked at our incumbent language training provider, and we decided to make a shift to transition from who we were using before and then partnering with GoFluent going forward. So this I thought I would take a few minutes to walk through with you in case any of you are in that same position, you know, or you have multiple language vendors that you're maybe using today per region, per country, and you want to consolidate into one globally, like John mentioned earlier. So in our situation, we had an incumbent strategic partner that enabled us to provide English language training only to our employees, and we had a per license kind of a structure in place. So given the criteria that I showed you a minute ago, we decided to make a change and established a relationship with GoFluent and put a transition strategy in place. So managing that change, right? So what we did just kind of a quick spin around the circle there in the middle. After we selected our new strategic partner, we notified all of our existing employees who were using the incumbent platform that a change was coming in a couple of months. Wrap up what you're doing, get to a logical break point or stop point in your language journey. And we also sent a number of other change management communications out to other stakeholders, leaders, business partners, and so forth throughout the company to make people aware that a change was coming. And part of that was to implement a new page on our intranet explaining the transition, the timing of the transition, the communications people could expect to receive. Again, just helping folks manage their way through that change and the benefits of what was going to be implemented in the new with the new platform, right? So we eventually, in the September timeframe of last year, we made that transition. We executed all of our launch communications to our existing users, to our entire employee base around the world, to all the other stakeholders. And on the right-hand side of the slide there, in September of last year, we converted over to GoFluent. And as part of that transition, we established an individual on my team who is the program manager globally for language learning training in the company, among other responsibilities, with responsibility for making sure that we've got that program in place. All of our documentation is good and solid. We have our registration process smooth and efficient for employees. We have reporting and utilization flowing, so we understand how our company is utilizing the platform and the program, and how we can partner with GoFluent, going forward to improve things. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the future as well.
Yeah.
So that's, oh, sorry, was there a question?
I wanted to just add that, as an organization, for Brandon Hall Group, we do a lot of technology selections with companies. That's one of the main services we provide. And your process, just in what I'm seeing here, is textbook as far as requirements gathering, being very specific about your needs, and making sure that any potential vendors don't just sort of meet the overall goal of improving language skills, but your specific goals for language learning in your organization. And then throughout the transition strategy, everything is very spot on with the process that we've developed and that we use for technology selection. So and I think it's the important point here is that I don't think many companies, when they think about sort of a technology solution like this that's specific to language, they may not put that kind of effort in. And what happens is you get, low satisfaction and missed outcomes and poor goals because they don't put that kind of thought into this type of technology. So I love that you guys did this for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Thanks for that. And the other thing, if we could just back to that previous slide for just a sec. The other thing that I think to really emphasize your point too is that in the lower right corner of that slide, there's a bullet that talks about regional administration. So in addition to having our global program manager working with John and his team at GoFluent to administer the program at an enterprise level, we've also identified regional business leaders in each of our regions to really champion how we can bring this program to life and the platform to life locally to address local needs and affect business outcomes for our employees and for the clients that we serve, right? So to that end, and you'll see in one of the future slides where I talk about things we're planning to do even deeper in the future, we'll see some more insights into that. But going forward now, after the cutover, after the implementation in September, we've also implemented a continuous monthly communication cadence where we keep the language training program alive and present in the monthly learning and development newsletter that we send out to all of our employees globally, so they can always link to it. It's always right there for them if they need it, and for new employees who join the company, they can become aware of it. And we've seen that strategy increase utilization and also increase employee productivity, which is a great transition now to that next slide.
Yeah, actually, Wes, this is John. If you don't mind, I'm just going to jump in and also add a comment to the last slide because it's such a great slide, and that is that sometimes companies in the space might have adopted a solution 4 or 5, 6 years ago. It's something that maybe they don't hear a lot of complaints about, and they may be reticent to move it because, let's face it, enterprise transition is takes some effort. Sure. But that solution may not be having any impact. It may not be getting any usage. And I think with DXC's case, I think your team really stepped up and saw that there was a huge opportunity to rebrand the Language Academy at DXC. To make a big statement about how important this was to the organization, and worked closely with our team and planned out this transition so that the transition actually happened extremely smoothly on the day it was planned. Your program manager who ran things from your side was incredible, and I think that's the response since the rollout has been phenomenal. So these transitions can be done and can really give a program a whole new look and feel and an opportunity to reintroduce it to the organization, have a whole new fresh impact on this space.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. And the other thing too that I'll mention through our due diligence process in transitioning to GoFluent was that we did identify, to the point that you made earlier, a couple of groups in our company that had relationships with other local language learning providers, and we brought them in. Once we identified them, we brought them into the process of evaluating the different strategic partners we were looking at. And they actually were able at the end of the day to say, gosh, well, if we do adopt GoFluent, then not only will that be a great solution for the enterprise, but it will also help us as well. So they actually transitioned onto the GoFluent platform as well. So we reduced the number of partner relationships we have and streamlined everything into one platform, which I think is a very positive move for our company. So and to the point you mentioned earlier about consistent reporting and so forth, it's all very helpful. So on our next slide, just a little bit of feedback I put together here to share with you all from some of our users. We survey our users and we ask them questions about their experiences. So you can see here some of the feedback that we're getting just from the first few months of implementing this new language training program throughout DXC. So you'll see things like here, like I can better comprehend ideas. This is a true career differentiator for me. I'm able to communicate more effectively, not just with clients or colleagues, but also with clients, which is fantastic for us in a services business to hear. On the right-hand side, better prepared to speak, right? More confident in my abilities and in meetings and communications, and from a written perspective as well, being able to be more confident, capable in those areas as well. So lots of great feedback here about the value that we are able to provide to our employees from a development perspective, and then conversely seeing that filter through to the business and the clients they support. Changing focus a little bit, I want to share just a few of the analytics, and in this case, some of the utilization statistics that we partner with GoFluent to produce and use to monitor and manage and improve the platform and the program that we offer to our employees. So this is just a small sample of what is a much larger collection of analytics that we have access to as a result of having a global platform like this implemented worldwide. So just a couple of key points this happens to show. These different charts are showing by language program, so English language learning or German language learning or French language learning, how many activities are completed by our employees in each one of those languages. So what you'll see here, a couple of things that I've highlighted there. English is the most studied language, which is what we anticipated. However, we are a global company and wanted to provide people with opportunities to learn other languages because we do support clients in different languages, and we have work centers around the world that do primarily speak different languages, so that was important. And what you can see, what we also see here is that the number of completed activities, if we look at it at a country basis, also does roughly correspond to where we as a company have large clusters of employees. Again, some things you would expect. We've also seen that some employees are learning more than one language, or more than one language. They're participating in development of that nature as well. So that's just a quick glance into some of the utilization that we see.
Wes, if you could just sort of clarify what the percentages represent in these charts.
Sure. So the percentages there represent the percentage. So these are the top for each one of these charts there. We'll look at the one that says English. The percentages represent the percentage of the people who are studying that language who are in a particular country, right? So, well, not people, it's completed activities, right? So for example, in the English chart there, you've got the largest bars there are people who are studying in Vietnam and Italy, right? So, and people who are completing the most activities in those countries. So in other words, what we're seeing is the most active users completing the most activities learning English are in the countries of Vietnam and Italy, right? Followed by Spain and Malaysia and Bulgaria.
Great, thanks for that.
And that's important for us to understand, because this concept of active user versus a less active user, right? So we happen to have delivery centers and other clusters of employees in different countries, or we're growing and hiring in different countries. So when we overlay some of those known entities over some of these results, it becomes, that's the power of the analytics that the GoFluent global platform enables us to see. So last slide here, just wanted to leave you all with a summary of a few of our successes and lessons learned as you embark on a journey to determine how you are going to implement language learning in your particular organization. So on the successes side, we've mentioned some of these before, but we have seen, as we anticipated, multiple languages being studied, indicating that that was a good decision for us to pick a strategic partner that enabled more than just English language training to be used. The second success there, we have seen a huge increase in the number of folks taking advantage of our language training program than we had before. And we attribute this to a number of things. First of all, GoFluent has been an incredibly strong partner in implementing the platform worldwide in DXC and making it easy to access for our employees. We had a number of those targeted launch communication and ongoing items. And the language learning program and platform now is much more aligned to our business requirements, including that customized language learning, whether it's by industry or other specialty area. And then we've had a number of insights that we're able to see with the global platform about the engagement of our active learners. So over 100,000 learning activities completed on the platform, 40,000 plus hours of overall user learning, which is incredibly large compared to some of our other training programs that we have in our enterprise. I thought the third sub-bullet here was really insightful. Over half of our learners, or of our employees, access the platform through a combination of devices. So sometimes they're on their PC, sometimes they're on their mobile device, and that's what we would expect from a global mobile workforce. And the GoFluent platform enables that really well for them. On the right-hand side of the slide, I think it's always exciting when I attend a webinar to hear some lessons learned and some next steps from folks. So we include some of that here too. And the first lesson learned here is that we are continuing to use the analytics available to us to drive engagement of the learners who are not as active as we would like them to be. So why is that? What can we do to help them along? Or are there other factors that we need to be aware of? The analytics that we do have and that we do receive from GoFluent are great, and we are partnering to customize those even further across multiple languages. The third one here goes to the concept I mentioned earlier about our regional business language training reps in DXC. That we feel those folks are a very rich resource to understand what are the specific needs that we can address locally with language learning programs. So we are in the process of further engaging them to understand specific needs and to bring the combined consultancy, if you will, of our global program manager together with the GoFluent folks to address those. And so also, number 4 here, we are working with our career development team and our inclusion and diversity organization to promote language learning training in their communications, in their websites, because there's a very close correlation, like John mentioned earlier, I believe, between improving your language skills and furthering some of the objectives in those areas. We are also looking to evolve as we go forward from our current focus on consumption and utilization to more of a digital badging environment where people achieve certain levels of language competency and achieve a digital badge. We're really digital badging is something that is picking up in many areas of our company and worldwide, and we are looking to introduce that to language learning as well. And then finally here, continuing to refine our measurement and evaluation strategy to further measure the specific business impact our program is having, not just on individuals and their perceived ability to speak or communicate more clearly, but what impact are we actually having on driving new business or add-on business, right? So that's a quick overview of the program and the partnership that we have with GoFluent at DXC. And I'll toss it back to our moderator here for any Q&A.
Yeah, and Wes, there's a question actually. You sort of answered it with number 6, that you're looking forward to, evolving the measurement and evaluation strategy. Do you have any thoughts around, and I know you're saying this is, sort of a future thing, but do you have any thoughts around what some of those outcomes, those business impact metrics might be? One of the questions came in was, have you considered looking at changes in profitability in some of those countries where, there's the most consumption of the English training or anything like that? Or do you have any other thoughts around what you might look to as a measurement of the impact the language is having?
Well, and that's a great question, and that is what we are beginning to explore next, right? And we've already had a couple of conversations about that, and the challenge that we are, and by that I meant that we are talking with some of our business leaders about how we can quantify business impact of improved language competency relative to all the other factors that may be involved in the signing of a new deal, or the successful close of some add-on business with a client, right? There are obviously a number of factors there. So we are looking at ways we can measure that both quantifiably and qualitatively through surveys, through conversations with different leaders, and those regional language reps that we talked about, I mentioned earlier. So more to come on that, but those are some of the things and next steps that we're planning.
Gotcha. That's great. Thank you. And John, if I could bring you back in for a question, was brought up the idea around XAPI and being able to sort of track any sort of English speaking behavior or language utilization through XAPI statements. Have you done any exploration of that at GoFluent?
Yeah, I mean, we can have integrated with just about every platform standard out there, and I know we have some XAPI implementations. I don't know the particulars about how we've been measuring and looking at sort of expanding this particular value of XAPI, but it's interesting. It's an interesting thought. One of the things that we've done a lot of recently is integrating with LXPs. And that's getting closer to the XAPI approach of allowing people to find nuggets of learning and being able to consume them and in a more natural way than going through a course catalog. So I'd say the use case there is better discoverability, easier shareability of content, and ultimately greater consumption and engagement.
Right. It's a good point. And I think that's the key, is sort of the continued integration of this type of learning with wherever learners are experiencing learning on an ongoing.
I think from our perspective, it comes down to what is the language strategy, or what is the learning strategy of the organization? How are they trying to best reach their employees, engage with their learners, and we can enable our solution through standard APIs, through SCORM, through SAML, through XAPI, whatever the integration of choice of the clients really is.
Yeah. In our research, we always find, and I think it's pretty much common sense, but we do see the results in our studies that those organizations that provide opportunities for the ability to practice and apply knowledge when it comes to learning have far better results than those that don't. And I would obviously imagine that would be very key in this type of learning, especially trying to put this into practice. So either Wes, if you have any thoughts around what sort of what do you use within GoFluent to allow people to sort of practice this language learning? Or John, if you want to speak more broadly to it about how you approach that practice.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. And you know, I like to equate our model to a gym membership, if you will. And you know, you can join a gym and have access to all the equipment 24/7, come in and just work out on your own, sort of self-service. And that would be equivalent to sort of the e-learning module and coming in and using as much of our language solution, all the languages we have, you know, to develop yourself on an individual basis. You also, to apply and to practice, you might want to go to a class, right? So join in the gym, spin class, a yoga class, what have you. In our world, we have small cohorts of 5 students, max to 5 students at your level, plus a live instructor, and you can go and practice. And you're hearing other people, often with other accents from other parts of the world, practice at the same level as you. So you're developing your ear while you're practicing. You can also have a personal coach, which is that next level up. It's that one-on-one engagement, and you're actually working with a private coach. There you can actually practice a presentation that you're going to deliver to, you know, the executives next week, or you can practice you know, something else that's really germane to the work you're doing. And when you finish up at the gym, you know, you might want to go to the smoothie bar and get a healthy drink. And we, you know, that's our e-writing module. So beyond, you know, the verbal practice, e-writing gives you the ability to work with an instructor to improve your written abilities. So writing emails, writing presentations, writing letters or memos and things like that. Those are the different modalities that you can incorporate.
Gotcha, that's great. And you know, one question that had come in actually pretty early on, but I thought it would be better because it's more of a discussion and it's a little bit big picture. But you know, we were talking about how Bill Gates' biggest regret was, you know, not learning another language. So the idea that here we have someone who is a native English speaker, wishing that he had learned another language, but yet our focus has been quite a bit on English. You know, what about the idea of helping English speakers acquire second and third languages? And so,
yes, yep.
My first, you know, response to that is, well, first, I think Wes showed a great example of how they're doing just that. They're making all kinds of languages available to people in all different countries, and I think that illustrates the issue. Is yes, we are focusing on English because that is typically the language of business. That's typically what these global organizations need. But the reality is every organization has to decide what's important to them. What are their needs? Do they need to have better French speakers in these different parts of the world? Do they need to have better? And if that's the case, you need a solution that helps you get there.
Yeah,
so I think,
yeah.
You know,
And what Wes definitely, you know, clearly illustrated that at DXC. And I know from other clients, some of this is counterintuitive, right? You know, and from, you know, if you're in America, you don't necessarily see what, you know, what the language needs are throughout the world immediately. We see in Germany a large demand for German language. It's like, what? How does that make sense? Well, there's the same technical talent shortage in Germany that there is in other parts of the world. And they're seeing a big influx of people from Eastern Europe and other countries that are coming to Germany to work. They have great technical skills, but they can't speak German at the level that is needed to be you know, fully productive in the country. So companies that are hiring these technical individuals are looking for German language solution to help upskill these individuals. So it is happening all over the world. It's not just English. That's why we focus on the primary business languages, which you know are 7 right now, including Mandarin. But yeah.
No, that's great. And so, yeah, again, I just wanted to highlight that how great that was, that, you know, you can see in practice from the DXC Technologies example that, you know, that has to be a consideration. So again, so thank you so much, obviously, Wes, for sharing your story. I think it's really critical that people understand what happens inside a global organization such as yours. And of course, John, thank you for bringing your expertise in this area around language learning. And thank you to everyone that attended and all the questions. We really appreciate it. And of course, thanks to GoFluent for allowing us to put this on today. So thanks, guys.
Terrific. Thank you, David.
Sure.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, Wes.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.